Well, shalom, everybody. There's a question that I've had in the past, not on my video pages or anything, because I haven't really discussed it before, and that is why I don't vote. And it's personal. I also find it scriptural, the reason why I don't. There's a lot of people out there trying to say that I'm anti-patriotic, this, that, the other thing. But if there was a righteous cause to fight over, I wouldn't mind, picking up arms myself. Like if we could go against the sins and it was basically put into law and effect, I wouldn't have a problem with fighting what the law says is true and correct. But when you got gay marriage, it just got put in all 50 states. It's like, phew. I don't even know why we call this. Well, our father calls it Sodom and Gomorrah. Basically, that's because of the laws that are in other places enforced on us, and them other places at the table of Satan, the devil, and her minions. And that's where these things are dreamed up, as they're eating their pork flesh and everything else, probably abortions, human abortions, all these things at their table. And anyone that eats these things is sitting at the table of the demons. And that's where most of these ideas for these laws come into effect, and it was brought out, that each and every state has over 4 million laws in effect. That's counting, for towns and counties or villages and cities, state. Then you got the federal laws. But what most people don't even understand is that these laws that you find in Vernon's annotated law books and all such, they're copyrighted for the first point, and you can't be using copyrighted material except for, educational purposes and such, maybe to emphasize, but they use it in the courts unlawfully because it's copyrighted. You have to have explicit permission from the author of any copyrighted material to use them in a public place to begin with. They don't have it, and I've made charges against them because they don't. As far as the laws themselves, they're not really laws. They're codes and statutes. They're guidelines, basically, and it's not even for we, the people. We're supposed to be living under natural law. It's like a law that is carried down by word of mouth. It's just what is acceptable and what's not. It's not a voting for anything that makes it right. Remember the children out in the wilderness? Moshe said, hey, let's have a raise of hands to see who's going to keep these laws and commandments. He never said that. But they all agreed to it because they wanted to live together. And that's how America was at first. It was founded on scriptures. A lot of people don't like to think of that. But our forefathers, even though they was Masons and satanic and such as that, they put forth an example to the people where they read the scriptures, in between their breaks. That's what they did, was they read scriptures to get an idea of how this country was to be run. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the country, I love the land, but it's not owned by anybody. That's why you have deeds and such, you don't own it. You're paying taxes on it. After it's paid off, you're paying taxes. It's just the corporation allowing you to use its property for finances. You take care of it. It's a pretty smart system. You take care of it. You don't own it. You can pass it on and then they'll pay taxes and such, but you're taking care of the property for them. And they're just making it an awful difficult time for anybody with a brain in their head, like I have, to actually vote for Frankenstein or Dracula, the Mummy, Batman, whatever. It's hard to even think about doing such a thing. I mean, all the kings in Israel, they didn't have a vote, as far as I know. They was picked out by Yahweh, handpicked. And oil was poured on their head to give them Holy Spirit to be able to guide the people in the laws and commandments. You get rid of the 14 million laws in every state, put 10 commandments in its place, and around 613 laws that not all of them even apply to you. If you're not a woman, there's a lot of certain laws only apply to women. And if you're a woman, there's a lot of laws and they're only apply to a man. You know, a woman can't get circumcised on the 6th day or the 8th day. There's no way that she can do that to fulfill the commandment, you know, the law. I couldn't come up with a simpler example, I guess you could say, of how I see all the world leaders. This is my own personal beliefs, my own observations. The reason I don't vote, even though I'm a veteran, and I gave my 3 years, you know, and I would that I didn't now, but I was very patriotic. I believe that my brother was in Vietnam. I had 2 brothers in the Air Force. I went in the Army like a dope, and they were always on me. I've been put in jail and everything else, but that's my whole life. Why I was called out, you know, was for this type of mistreatment. But in the end, our King says all the things that you had, you know, stolen or given up for my name's sake, you know, I'm going to pay you back tenfold in this present time. Enoch spoke about me in, you know, the writings as well. I don't believe that any of the 144,000 would be voting, especially if they was to see the video I'm going to bring, because, you know, the 144,000 go through hell. A lot of that has to do with the legal system, and some might not have to go through that. They may have other qualifiers, but I believe the book of Enoch picked out the most severe scenarios. In my life, it matches right up with it perfectly. Take a look at my older video starting back in May of 2018, I think it was, or was it 2019? Might have been 2019. No, it was 2018, because I was at the house before it got burned down. Anyway, a description for those that are leading everybody. I don't care if it's city or whatever. You know, you got so many reptilians in office anyway, and it talks, you know, one of the first things with the curse that came from Eve eating the apple, or, you know, the apple, it was actually a sin. It wasn't a fruit at all. In fact, at that time, from what some books say, and some research, is that Adam and Eve, they didn't even eat food because they didn't need to. They were created as our Father in His image, and at that time they didn't need to even eat. They was taking care of things, all right? But then after they were found with a sin, and that came from eating the knowledge, maybe all of a sudden they realized that the one thing they most likely were keeping out of all the laws was the Sabbath, because Yahweh rested on the 7th day. Adam was made, you know, on the 6th. So he was following what the Father was doing. And after they may have eaten, you know, and you can eat. The Messiah said, you must eat me. Okay? Eat me like bread, man. You got to drink my blood. You have to eat my flesh if you're going to be of me. So it's not talking, you know, sitting down at a banquet, you know, like they do out here in some of these places where you have to attend if you want to stay being movie stars, or, you know, whatever these bigger fields are where you can be a hero and everything. And they make you do certain things to show your allegiance to Satan, the same way in 325 AD, when all of the believers had been puddled together and they had their choice, you know, do you really believe or do you want to believe like us? Just eat a piece of pork. Some of them ate the piece of pork. They became like all the rest of them. You know, and that's why I came up with this here definition, because all the true believers were killed off. And since 325 AD until these very last days, with the raising up of these 144,000 that all of creation is crying out for to be revealed, well, nobody believes this right now anyway. Those that say they do, that's excellent, because, you know, even Kepha told our king, hey, you're the son of Yahweh, man. I know who you are. I can tell. But nobody else, you know, seemed to at first. Then they started chiming in. A couple of them say, yeah, you are. You are our Messiah, you know. But for the most part, he wasn't believed. They nailed him to a tree. And he's saying, hey, I am he. But there were some, that understood the truth. And they could understand and see the Heavenly Father because they could see the Son. And just like the test I gave here day before yesterday, the spiritual test to see if you actually know him or not, well, that's the thing that all our politicians need to do is take that test, because all I could think of to define them was no understanding. That's what these men and women are that's in office today. I mean, they've got understanding toward evil and business. You had Obama and Bush's and Clinton's poppy fields and such being bombed using your tax dollars and munitions, made for the military, and they went and bombed up their poppies and everything, and their laboratories and such, but they never went to jail. And that's what goes on. That's what these laws are of the land. They're supposed to be to keep your government officials in line. That's what they're written for. They're not written for you and me. We're supposed to be under a natural law, which is not causing anybody harm or damage. If you do that, you pay, and you pay well. That's why they had stocks and stuff, they'd stand you out in front of City Hall or whatever with your head in your hands, all closed up there, and people knocking you in the head with lettuce and rotten tomatoes. That's what you deserve to show you, so that hopefully you'd repent and fit back into the society of our Heavenly Father, run by his laws, which are the natural laws. They were what was given to us way back before Moshe. Way back. And it's been verbal, and they lived by it for the most part. Then they started going a-whoring after the gods right at the end of the stay out there in the wilderness. They went a-whoring after the gods when they went into the Canaanites, and the gods are worshipped today. They've got "In God We Trust" on every dollar bill and the coins and such. And who is this God? It is Al-Yahnai, Elohim of the Canaanite and the Phoenician pantheon, the pantheon of their gods. Take a look at it. The children went in there, and that's who these Hebrew writings came from. And it shows where they went wrong. Even Jeremiah in chapter 23, verse 26 and 27. 27, the last word, is where it says, their forefathers have forgotten my name, Yahweh's name, for Baal. And when you look up Baal in the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, you'll see it means Lord. So anyone praying to the Lord today, you're praying to Baal, because the children after the wilderness went into the promised land and started worshiping the Canaanite and Phoenician gods. Who is God and Lord? El and Baal, okay? Baal was El, or Elohim's son. Yeah, that's how it works. And translated into English, God came from El, or Elohim, and God's, was the plural part like Elohim or Elohim. And then Baal is the Lord in English today. So when you're calling on Baal, look it up yourself in Yachanan or John chapter 17. Our Messiah, after the disciples were following him for a while, he revealed his name to his disciples, because they was calling on these Canaanite and Phoenician deities, just like the Sadducees and Pharisees. And if you look why the disciples got stomped so bad after Yahshua ascended into heaven the last time there, it's because they were calling on that name. And so many people say it don't matter. It's because, like all our officials are much of the people, they all have no understanding. How many of y'all failed that test, the spiritual test in First Yachanan chapter 2, 3 through 6, Everybody fails it the first time. And it's not like because you have no understanding that you can't get some. But anyway, I punched in no understanding to show you why I don't vote. Here it says in Psalms 32:9, do not be like the horse or like the mule, which have no understanding, which must be harnessed with the bit and bridle, else they will not come near you. Now, George Bush kind of reminds me of that fellow, he was, wow, you people voted for him, though. I mean, look at this world, man. You know, and are you proud to say, "Oh, I voted for this boy"? You know, I mean, as a Christian, you know, or Islam, whatever you are, living in America where you can vote, you must feel really proud that you voted. Of course, you got those that say, "Well, if you would have voted, it would have made all the difference in the world." Well, what if I voted and Hillary Clinton got in there instead? Boo! I'm not participating with the politics of a corporation. The main goal of from what I've seen in the American way of life by the government, the corporation that's set up, it's not for the people anymore. I mean, most of your politicians, when you hear a battle or a war brewing, it's over because somebody's not wanting to buy our arms and want to buy them from someone else, or they're messing with the oil. You know, I mean, business. They're sending our sons and daughters over to opium fields to take them from people so that they could, you know, whoever wins the battle, you know, those politicians or whatever, get the share in the poppies and such. And it's not something that I'm going to vote for. I don't recall anywhere, like I said earlier, where you're to vote for King David or King Saul or what. There was no vote. Let the blind lead the blind. Here in Isaiah 27:11, this is under no understanding. When its boughs are withered, they will be broken off. The women come and set them on fire. For it is a people of no understanding. Now listen to what goes on for those with no understanding. Therefore he who made them will not have mercy on them. Oh my, I guess you can forget all that. Oh, he loves you no matter what baloney, huh? I mean, it says, therefore, the ones that have no understanding, therefore he who made them will not have mercy on them. And he that formed them will show them no, it's got here, favor, you know. He's not going to show them any delight in what they've done. They're going to suffer and suffer greatly. That's what the judgment on the earth right now is for. And these with no understanding, they've never come into the judgment prior to our King's return. It's much better to have your sins answered for before our King returns than to try after. Honestly. Isaiah 29:16. Surely you have things turned around. Shall the potter be esteemed as the clay? For shall the thing made say of him, who made it? Or did he not make me? Or shall the thing formed say of him who formed it, he has no understanding? That's exactly what's going on when you got this new gay or homosexual marriage, lesbianic marriage, that kind of stuff, you know, and things going on, and they redefine what our Heavenly Father set in the Scriptures to be a marriage between a man and a wife. A man and a woman, that is, you know, because a wife could be a man or a woman nowadays, and sometimes a horse or a cow or dog, or that's where they're going to. And you can see it. I showed in one of these ads where it's got a picture of a dog, you know, hunched up there, you know, poor Molly, where they are trying to get bestiality on the screen. You can put a lampshade on her head and she'll show you unconditional love. Well, our King doesn't have that kind of love. He doesn't have unconditional love. Anyway, this here is the last of these four, but it talks 18 times in 8 verses. These are the other ones here. There is no wisdom or understanding or counsel against the Father, and there isn't. You know, it's all going to come to nothing. It's not counsel. Here in Jeremiah 4:22, it says, for my people are foolish. They have not known me. Now, I just brought that spiritual test to see if you know him or not. Is he lying? You think? They have not known me. They are silly children, and they have no understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do righteousness, they have no knowledge. So there they got no understanding and they got no knowledge as well. But the knowledge is to do what's right, and they just don't do it. Now, here's another reason why I don't get into voting for these kind of people to run, because, I mean, all these dead babies, if you voted the people in that allow these things to take place, and it says in Scripture, in Proverbs, that, a king can search out, with his eyes, and that he wouldn't allow no liars or deceivers or such in his council. But it's not even him putting his council together anymore. They above, those on the strings, they're putting in who they want, and we're talking reptilians and such. Yes, indeed. There are those that are aliens living on the earth. I mean, it talks about when the elect, the chosen, the 144,000 are gathered. They're going to be gathered from the farthest parts of the earth to the farthest parts of the heavens. There are some there that are of that number, the 144,000. We live, one from a city and two in a family. We don't know many people. When you drive by a church and see it full, you can know that the 144,000 aren't there. And most likely you won't find one of us there. They kick us out pretty quick. Anyway, you want to talk about the false news, the fake news. Well, here we go to 2003. This is one of the first fake newsers that they probably should have thought about. But these people should be in jail. Okay? They should have whatever they desired to take from me should be taken from them. And they'd never do these things again. But they don't. And the corrupt ones, I've written all the way up to the presidents. I've written mayors and governors, and you can see all these things in record, in the different court cases that I've had. These people have been addressed. And what do? They let people misappropriate public and federal funds, which is supposed to be a real no-no. And you can see that in the laws that are written by these men that your officials are supposed to uphold. They're supposed to be the example, and if they fall short, they're supposed to be the example as to why you shouldn't do it. And instead, they get furthered in their offices. The more wicked and evil they take onto themselves, the higher up they go. It's sad. And a lot of this came from the reptilian. They are the enemy of the woman, okay? And I don't mean me as being a woman, but the body of Messiah in these last days. It's a battle going on, and we're going to bruise her head with our heel, and their heads will bruise our heels, so it's not going to be pleasant either way around. But anyway, these are some of the things they've done to me and why I don't vote, because it's well known, documented, and known felons got released at my loss after they came and did an unlawful demolition. They never gave me notice of coming. One morning I get a knock on the door. My wife and I, she was pregnant at the time, ushered out of our house. They bulldozed everything. Now, the bulldozing demolition order was by a man called Richard Sullivan, which is all the reason of this here taking place. He came down on my property, I think it was 1987, put my 6-month-old female Rottweiler into my house and burned it down around her ears while I was at choir practice. I just finished refurbishing the house, but why'd they want my house burned down? Well, they were planning on building what they call a Lytle Shores 2. They already had Lytle Shores 1, where they took taxpayer dollars, built man-made lakes, put high-dollar houses all around them, and refused to let the public in there to do fishing or enjoy the lakes. That's taxpayer dollar at work right there, see? And they wanted to do the same with my property. So back in the 70s, they put this dam across Cat Claw Creek in the spring. Waters came from the rains, and it back flooded this old black area. One old black fellow, man, he almost died on his bed because the waters were raising so high. They rescued him, and then they went and knocked the dam down. The waters receded. Now, the place never flooded before. This is how they use your tax dollars. Then they went to the old black folks and said, hey, look, we're going to give you pennies for your property instead of dollars because we're going to bulldoze everything and make this a flood zone for 15 years. And in the meantime, we're going to make plans for Lytle Shores too. Well, they wanted my property. So Richard Sullivan burned me down when I said he did so in a Board of Building Standards Committee meeting in front of him and the judge and everybody. And he says, Richard Sullivan put my dog in my house and burned it down, and now you want, me to do this and do that and the other thing? Well, I need time. They gave me a month to get rid of the burnt structure, and I could keep the foundation. I could actually keep the house, but I noticed that the mortar in between the rocks, it was a rock house, had deteriorated. So I got Tony's disposal service over. I had thousands of birds, exotic and domestic birds. I was in that business. I had several incubators going, full of baby chicks popping out every day. And I was selling them, boy. I had just quit my job when they came down and bulldozed everything. All my birds, thousands of birds. But I had friends and relatives. They came down. I killed a bunch of birds, and we had, all sorts of birds, and we had steak and everything, and everybody pitched a hand in, and we tossed everything into that Tony's disposal service dumpster. And he put right on the receipt before the 30 days was up that it was for the removal of the burnt structure and debris from the entire area. It was spick and span, except for where we were living, our house. I mean, we had built a new house from that one. There was nothing condemned. He come down, kicked us off our property, bulldozed everything. My wife was pregnant for the first one. We ended up living, and this was February 27, 1989, that took place. Now, we got stuck living on an abandoned school bus in the middle of the winter, and we were thankful. We had no clothes or anything. They took it all to the dump. So I billed them because I went to court, and they kicked it out. Gary Brown, he was an attorney that took me on a contingency basis, and he lost the suit because he failed to name the defendant. What he had put on the paper was the Abilene Building Inspector's department or office, one or the other, department or office. And come to find out that it was either department or office, so they kicked it out without giving me any remedy whatsoever. I fired Gary. He was wanting me to go ahead and get a appeal going, and I need $10,000 up front. And I'm like, Gary, I'm living in an abandoned school bus. No one's hiring me, man. I've been blackballed in this city. Well, I can't help you then. I says, that's right, you're fired. I don't want your help. Next thing you know, it's going to tell you in this article, it doesn't explain it all, but I didn't find out about it until I had to go to court, a couple times over the suit that I proved they misappropriated your public and federal funds, and they didn't get a penalty at all out of it, except they had to pay for the court costs instead. They used your tax dollars as seed money, each wanting in excess of $10,000 each from me. 10 plaintiffs? That's $100,000. And they wanted exemplary damages and me in prison for 10 years because they unlawfully bulldozed me. I lost everything. I mean, packs of dogs came running through just killing birds and leaving them all over. It took weeks to pack and stack them, man. I tried burying them at first. Didn't work. I had to burn them. And we're talking thousands of birds. They put me out of business, okay? I mean, I lost everything. They wouldn't pay me nothing back. The court ripped me off because we failed to name the defendant properly. It was either an office or a department, and my attorney didn't do it. Well, after him, I only used Joshua as my lawyer from then on, and I've been through a lot of court cases. But anyway, Gary Young was the name of that attorney, and he, without my permission or knowledge, filed it into the federal court. Now, this is how corrupt it gets, because shouldn't a judge at least want to see the defendant or the plaintiff? My name was forged on the documents. My wife at the time, her name was Judith. and they had notarized documents where my alleged wife had signed Anne. Her name's Judith, and she signs it Anne. Well, she didn't sign it, someone did it for her, and it was notarized. Now, to notarize something, you need a driver's license. So they've been perverting everything and getting away with it, and when it's pointed out, they don't hear it. I'm not going to vote for these people. And you shouldn't either. If you've got a brain, you should let the blind lead the blind and let them do their thing. Because I tell you, I don't want to stand in front of my king and say, yeah, I did vote for that. No, I'm going to say, no, I'm not going to break these laws and commandments. But anyway, this here article you cannot find in the Abilene Reporter News archives. And why? Because they removed it, because I went down there and I told them how bad a bunch of liars they were. They even said they tried to contact me or look me up. And that the House of Yahweh didn't know who, they knew who I was. They didn't try. And when I went down to set them straight, they wanted to do, so I billed them. I charged them $500,000 for every time they used my name in that lie, in that fraud, unless they retract. Instead, they removed it from the archives, and it wasn't for this Cult Education Institute, it would have been lost forever. And here we are. It says Abilene City Hall is taking serious, or sect member threatens to seize city's property. Abilene Reporter, July 26, 2003, fake news by Loretta Fulton. Abilene City Hall is taking seriously a threat from a man to confiscate more than $1 billion in computers and other city property as repayment for a 1989 house demolition. Even if the amount raised eyebrows, no, I wasn't wanting $1 billion in computers. There was a sale, and I already had filed by notary protest, which is supposed to be above the laws or the courts of this land. If you have a notary protest successfully done, then there's no contesting it in court because you didn't answer, or for whatever reason, the notary protest was successful. Mine was successful. I own Abilene, Texas. So I was making a point. I put in procurement papers, even for the sheriff, and the sheriff, he turned me in, man, which helped. He put in an affidavit full of lies, as well as the other 10 affidavits known to be full of aggravated perjuries, and still on the record. And nobody had to answer for the the falsehoods that everybody else, we the people, would go to prison for. Even the city attorney, when she was on the witness stand, I proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that she lied. She perjured herself. And I told the bailiff, I said, you heard it, bailiff. Here's the proof right here, and she lied. You need to take this here woman and take her to jail and put her in jail for, aggravated perjury immediately. And he's like, huh? He didn't know what to do. And I looked at the judge. I says, Judge, I'm moving you to do your job and your duty. Have this woman arrested and, tell the bailiff to come over here and take that woman to jail for aggravated perjury. In his jaw and he changed the subject. She jumped off the chair and hightailed it. Pretty soon, I think she had ended up, I don't remember if she fled the county or if she fled the state after resigning. But these kind of things go on. And they protect one another. And I'm not, now, if the government cleaned up this kind of stuff from the grassroots, they tried to murder me because of these things. Put me in solitary confinement for 44 days and starved me. Well, the first few days they kept me in the cell in just my underwears, my briefs, and my pair of socks and sandals on. They turned the temperature way down, man. I mean, I could see my breath puffing sometimes, and they kept me in there for a few days. I insisted on a Bible, and I just walked as much as I could, man. I was getting exhausted. My heart was going crazy, and I says, man, so they ended up putting me in solitary confinement right away, where I spent the rest of my hitch. But the first 7 days, they didn't give me anything but toilet water if I wanted to drink it. They don't have to treat you like a human being when you're in jail. In fact, part of their law states that you're an animal. You are an animal. If they take you into custody because of certain things, you are less than an animal. Because animals have rights. You as a people today, you don't have these things. You have corporate dollars, but what I did was I had a procurement order that I had wrote out, and I gave it to an auctioneer that was auctioning off city property, and I notified, the mayor and everyone that I was doing this, and that I wanted certain vehicles or whatever they bid, I would just take it off the bill they owed me from my notary protest. So what they did in retaliation was they used the Abilene Reporter News to religiously persecute me. You can't say this ain't persecution. When they come out and say you're a sect member and that you're going to steal, and they do get down here to say it. It says, we don't have nearly that many computers, City Attorney Sharon Hicks said. There was like one or two computers that I wanted. They were older, as they were getting rid of them by the city. But I could have used them because I was trying to do some online business at the time. And I was helping people win lawsuits and everything else. I did it for free for the most part, and they were very successful, and I seldom was, because Enoch wrote about me saying that they, the authorities, cover up for each other. They're the ones who plunder me and all these different things. And there may be some of the other 144,000 gone through the same. But I've got valid proof, This is what they call prima facie evidence. And prima facie is something that is in the record. I mean, there's no way it can be denied. These things are in the record under seal and key. And this is what they did. This is on Wednesday. Hicks emailed city employees advising them of the warning from Mr. Alan Douglas Fountain, now known as Al-Yahnai Fountain Hawkins, which is true. I won't get into this story on that, but it's nothing wicked or evil. I got screwed, let's say, but it's okay. It was all part of this journey. Hicks cautioned employees to alert an official if anyone called or arrived in person requesting city property. So far, Fountain has not attempted to take any property, Hicks said. The city issued a cease and desist order against him, and I laughed at it. It's like, you guys are funny, man. You work for me and don't even realize it. It says, right now, we are just proceeding with the alert until he takes more steps, Hicks said. The dispute stems from the 1989 demolition of Fountain's house at 600 Virgil Street, located off TMP Lane, where the House of Yahweh headquarters is located. Now, first thing I want you to really notice is this is at 600 Virgil, but that's the same address that Richard Sullivan put on the demolition order, was 600 Virgil. They were already made aware because I billed them, because my property is 700 Virgil and 600 Virgil never existed. They bulldozed me and put my pregnant wife and me into a school bus in the middle of the winter with no heater, no nothing. Everything we had, we were wearing. That was it. They took pots and pans and everything to the dump. Okay? It had nothing. 600 Virgil is the fraud they had. And I put in there an affidavit saying, Judge, I'll tell you what. It said, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Any man, woman, or child on earth, or those from the heavens that can prove that I have any cause of action whatsoever or anything over 600 Virgil, then the judge can take that bailiff's gun and me down to the parking lot and blow my brains out across the parking lot if you can prove I ever owned or contested or had anything whatsoever to do with 600 Virgil other than addressing this fraud in the court. And the judge still let it stay. In fact, it was could have been years afterwards, after the judge made them pay for the cause and action to be filed, and so that it could cover up their misappropriation of using federal and public funds for seed money. Okay, so that's what they had to do to get rid of it. But as far as them admitting, I kept writing them with the Public Information Act saying, hey, I want to know who owns 600 Virgil. I want the taxpayers number, this and that and the other thing concerning 600 Virgil. And they kept saying, oh, it's in litigation. And I'm like, hey, the court's over, man. You know, you all bribed the judge enough that he has, you know, shut the case down. It's no longer in litigation. Now, I want you to provide for me these things from the city and county records for concerning 600 Virgil. I want electric bills, everything, water bills. Finally, my beloved friend, Shane Broussard Hawkins, he picked me up one day. He says, I'm tired of listening to this. He says, grab your records. I said, okay, where are we going? He says, well, we're going to the state capitol. So we went down to Austin. And we went right up there to the fellow that's sitting in office as the governor now, but he was only the attorney general at that time. And they sent out some fella out there to talk to me, and I showed him all the stuff, man. And he's like, wow. And they were going to do an investigation, but nothing ever came out of it. Now, the one thing he did do was he wrote the city of Abilene and said, you damn well better give them all the information pertaining to 600 Virgil. This case is not, you know, something I'm going to let slide. If you don't do it, we're going to take action against you. And that's what the fella did, okay? So they went ahead and they wrote me a letter saying, pertaining to the 600 Virgil Street, they say they have no information concerning it. You know, it never existed. And it still doesn't exist, but they filed that. 10 city employees, each wanting me to pay them $10,000 each, exemplary damages, and me put in prison for them filing this fraud. And every time I brought in something, my electric bill, my water bill from 700 Virgil, it just, well, I got to kick that out. It has nothing to do with 600 Virgil. I said, well, there ain't no 600 Virgil. You know, and when they brought up the thing down here where it talks about, it says, the religious sect, labeled a cult by some, was started by former Abilene police officer Bill Hawkins, now known as Israel Hawkins. That's about the only truth they have in here, other than my names. It says, many of Hawkins' followers changed their last name to match his. Well, it was because we're supposed to go to Jerusalem. This is many years ago, and we were to have the Hawkins name to become citizens. It would have been a much easier process, whatever. That's why I had my name changed, okay? No, none of this other stuff where he became a dad to me or anything like that. Then it says, a House of Yahweh spokeswoman said she did not know Alan Douglas Fountain. I'm one of the, at the time, one of the best guys in the choir. Every Sabbath she heard me singing. She knew who I was. I was Bill Hawkins' personal bodyguard when I first joined with that group back in the 80s. I was his personal bodyguard. I was in his office. I know the shenanigans and everything went on, and I watched the man turn into this greedy creature that started selling and buying and everything on the Sabbath. I had to leave, okay? I couldn't put up with it no more. It says, or Alan Fountain Hawkins, but would ask him to return a phone call if he was located. They wouldn't return. No, they knew me. They just put that in there to do whatever they do. They lie. It's fake news. It says a phone call was not returned. Hell no. I went down there. I didn't use the phone. I went down right to their office with the article, and we had a heart-to-heart with the editors and such. It says neither name is listed in the Abilene phone book. Well, shoot, man. I ain't have a place to have a phone. I was living with friends, though, that as a slave, basically, you know, afterwards. My wife had to have a place to give birth so that the child wouldn't be taken. And I did the cooking and cleaning and everything, you know. I mean, I was basically the slave. My bride at the time, she didn't like getting her fingers too dirty, and she didn't do much for any kind of cleaning house or anything. So I did it, but she always got us kicked out of places we were at, too. I don't know how. Nobody would ever tell me what she done, you know, but I had to find some place, like, before sundown to get the family put into. So it wasn't always pleasant. Anyway, it says, and it's all because of this, what they done to me here. In fact, I had broke my back because I had to end up going back to New York to get a job because no one in Abilene would hire me. So I ended up in New York, got a job, and I broke my back where I wouldn't have had to break my back if I still had my chicken business, my exotic birds and everything. You know, if they didn't unlawfully bulldoze me. It's all contingent upon what they done to me, and I'm still damaged. And I haven't got a response back from anybody. And I've got over 80 emails out there that I sent to governmental, law enforcement, and news agencies, and nobody had the courtesy to write me back except for one. That was the appellate court, to tell me, I could file a suit if I want. And it's like, no. I'm reporting this to a judge. The judge is supposed to do the actions on these known felonies that have been conspired and, are ongoing. He's supposed to take action, but they don't. I have had stacks of letters where I reported these attorneys and such doing things unlawful, the judges as well, but they out, it's like the foxes regarding the chicken coop. You don't get nowhere with it. So it says, Hicks said that in 1989, before she became city attorney, Fountain filed a suit against the city. His house had been condemned in January of that year and demolished. No, it wasn't in January. It was February to begin with. Okay, but anyway, Fountain was ordered by the city to remove the rubble, which I did do, and I had shown right in the record, but the judge could never see that, and it was there, but the problem was that the receipt was for 700 Virgil. And they're trying, so he couldn't pay attention to it, he's saying. But it showed the date when it was removed. The stone house, everything was removed. They're trying to say they demolished it. And they charged me $900 and some odd for the demolition, which I told them they could cram. And then it says Fountain was ordered by the city to remove the rubble. Yes, they did tell me to remove the rubble, and it was done. I have it on record, but they ignored it. Hicks said the house had burned. Yeah, Richard Sullivan burned it. And the city cleared the lot when Fountain failed to. No, I didn't fail to. Richard Sullivan came down with a demolition order for 600 Virgil, an address that don't even exist, and he stole everything I owned. My business, he put me all out of business. Great shock on a pregnant wife to be put out in the middle of the winter with no place to go. And of course, if there was condemned property there, the city would have had to put my wife and me up for up to 5 years in housing, according to their laws. But because nothing was condemned, they didn't have to do it. They just robbed me of everything and thought it was great. So this Fountain's suit was filed in the state district court, which was transferred to federal court. No, it wasn't. It was lost in the district court. Then Gary Brown put it in. Now, I'm sitting in the courtroom, okay? This is how your courtrooms are run. And they brought up, I says, I never went to I've never been in a federal court. I never filed that. And they had a copy. And of course, everything that they say they have a copy of, I want that filed in evidence. I'm looking at it and seeing the forgeries and everything, and I didn't know that you're supposed to ask the judge to approach the bench. So I just scoot back, I get up, I go over to the judge, and I said, look at this. And as I do that, he's fumbling on the table, just trying to, my record's about that thick on his table as it is, and I have to stop for everything for him to look up what I'm speaking about. Okay, so and I'm looking at the paper and I see clearly that it's already an outline of everything I'm guilty of and he's going to pronounce on me. A premeditated judgment sitting right there, and he gets a school. What? I says, look at this crap. I says, you need to put these people in prison for all these forgeries that you're allowing and using for evidence against me. I says, that ain't my signature, and my wife is not Ann. My wife got upset with me. She's Judith. Did it matter? No. Still in evidence against me. So anyway, that's the kind of stuff that I don't think should go on in America. Even in the Corporation of America, that's incorporated with the Vatican and the Zionists, and it's all incorporated. That's why you can't sue a corporation and such. And they're into the arms and the drugs dealings, okay? That's what they do, and torturing people and capsizing other people's countries and such, so that they could take their property and whatever. And I don't want to put my children into those kind of wars for greedy people, greedy men, to just take money from other people. I mean, if they just took a look at what they call the CAFR, the Certified Annual Financial Reports for every city, every state, every county. They all have these Certified Annual Financial Reports. And if you got in there and found out where the money is, they've been stealing from you all these years. They've been buying the corporations, the governments. Okay, all the way up. It's the governments have overtaken all the corporations. They've got pretty much a controlling percentage of everything, and they're not supposed to have anything at all. That's why they made President Trump give up his businesses when he took office. He had to sign everything over. Well, the government owns, these corporations and such, and that's why it's a mess, man. It's just a mess. If they got to cleaning up like they promised to drain the swamp, well, all they got to do is look at these things. And I got plenty more. This is just the tip of the iceberg, what they've done to this one of the 144,000. Satan knows who I am, and I'm certainly not going to please her in any way by going down and voting for Frankenstein or the Mummy or any of these that simply have, like Scripture says, no understanding. So I hope you can understand that, why I don't vote. It's not because I'm unpatriotic. It's because I don't see any sense in it. And I don't want to have what they do on my head. It's hard enough to keep my own blood off my own head. I'm trying to be a warnman, a watchman, trying to let y'all know if you're falling short, please repent of it. I'll help you. I'll help you. Spread this video out there and let people know why this veteran who doesn't even have VFW membership qualifications, because it just so occurred in my stint that I volunteered for, didn't come during a time of war. So I'm not allowed to be in the VFW, okay? It's like everywhere I go I'm prejudiced against, and everywhere I just fall through the slats, That's how it's always been. And that's how I see it going to be until our king gets here. And then he reveals all truth. But before he gets here, he's going to seal 144,000. And you might not listen to me right now, but you will. And our king is going to bring back to these men that have robbed me and everything. And he's going to give them back everything. What they did to me, he's going to give to them. Piled up and shaken down, and piled up and shaken down, and they're going to have it. And I don't know how well they're going to do, because it was pretty crappy. It still is. With that, I'm not voting. Please, this is my opinion. I'm not voting. Whether you do or not, I'm not trying to talk you out of it. You want to vote, you go ahead and you participate. Just remember, the next time someone goes into an abortionist, you voted for it. I love you all. Please consider these things. Prove what I say wrong. I'll show you all kinds of information, that they do nothing about. And I've written all the way to the president, the Attorney General of the United States. I used to be a radio show host. I got fired once by the Secretary of Defense of the United States of America because I put him on the spot about the Bosnian War. I said, hey, look at the book called The Keys of This Blood by a Father Malachi Martin. Then in there, he shows that the Catholic Church is actually over all the countries, all the nations. And what he says goes. He says, so why don't he just tell them Catholic boys to put their guns down, and the Muslims and the Christians and everyone to put their guns down and stop fighting? I said, and you wouldn't have this war. Well, I got escorted out of the radio station. I had two different radio show hosts, Drip from the Lip or Shoot from the Hip, and Big Al's Trading Post. And I also introduced, a lot of other. I was at KNTS 1470 AM. After they had booted me out of there, all the advertisers withdrew all their advertisements, and they went belly up within no time at all. But they couldn't do nothing about it because the Secretary of the Defense of the United States of America got pissed off at me with the interview I gave him, so they even took away my FCC license, okay? So if you want to talk about what I think about this corruption, it's a shame, and it's going to take our king having to come here to straighten it out, because all the men that's in there now are going to be, and women or whatever they are, they don't even know anymore what gender they are. They're still figuring out if they have a penis or a vagina, and once they do, maybe they'll get a little understanding and start doing something instead of keep telling everyone, oh yeah, we've got 50,000 indictments, this, that, blah, 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 and nobody goes to jail. It's a carrot in front of the, vote for me because we got these indictments, and it's like, boy, no, straighten it up, guys, and then I can maybe have a little sense of pride in the way your government runs. If you bring it to the laws and commandments as you're commanded to do, and how it was at the start, I'll be right for you, but it still won't vote. It won't need to, because everybody that gets in there anyway should be living by the natural law, as well as all your corporate laws and the Vernon's annotated law books and such. So with that, my friends, I love y'all, and shalom. I'm not voting.